In 2023, Saudi Aramco, the state oil company, reported annual profits of $121 billion, more profitable than Apple, more profitable than any company in the Western world. A number so large it is difficult to place in any meaningful human context. And yet the men running Saudi Arabia are not celebrating. They are building, frantically, urgently, with a focus that suggests not confidence but something closer to controlled panic, because they understand something that most outside observers have been slow to grasp. The oil era has an end date, and Saudi Arabia is racing against it. Today on Wealth Map we are mapping Vision 2030, the most ambitious national economic transformation program in the world. The specific bets Saudi Arabia is making, the specific timeline it is operating against, and whether the most consequential economic gamble of the 21st century is going to work. Here is the reality that Vision 2030 was designed to confront. Saudi Arabia's economy is approximately 42% dependent on oil revenues. Its government budget is funded predominantly by oil. Its citizens have historically paid no income tax, a social contract made possible entirely by oil wealth. For decades, this arrangement worked because oil demand kept growing and the price kept the revenues flowing. Two things are now changing simultaneously. First, the global transition to renewable energy is accelerating. Electric vehicle adoption is growing faster than almost any mainstream forecast predicted 5 years ago. Solar and wind energy costs have fallen by over 90% in the last decade. The long-term trajectory of global oil demand, while still debated in its precise timing, is no longer upward. Second, Saudi Arabia's own population is growing rapidly. A young population, over 60% of Saudi citizens are under 30, with rising expectations for employment, opportunity, and quality of life. A population that cannot be sustained indefinitely on oil revenues that are structurally declining in real terms, relative to the demands being placed on them. Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince who effectively runs the country, looked at these two trajectories converging and concluded that the window for transformation was not decades away. It was open now, and it would not stay open indefinitely. The instrument of transformation is the Public Investment Fund. Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund was a relatively conventional institution before 2016, managing oil revenues conservatively, investing in traditional assets, operating largely out of the public eye. Mohammed bin Salman transformed it into something else entirely. Today, the PIF manages over $700 billion in assets and is targeting $2 trillion by 2030. It is one of the most aggressive capital deployment vehicles on Earth, moving at a speed and scale that has reshaped entire industries. The investments span a range that would have seemed inconceivable for a sovereign wealth fund a decade ago. A $100 billion commitment to a technology fund managed by SoftBank, a significant stake in Uber, ownership of Newcastle United Football Club, a controlling position in Live Golf, the rival tour that forced a restructuring of professional golf globally, investments in electric vehicle companies, gaming companies, entertainment platforms, and real estate developments across 4 continents. Each of these investments is not simply a financial bet. Each is a strategic move in a larger game, acquiring expertise, building relationships, developing capabilities, and generating the kind of economic activity that can exist independently of oil revenue. But the domestic transformation is where the stakes become truly extraordinary. Inside Saudi Arabia, the scale of what is being attempted is almost difficult to comprehend. New cities are being built from nothing in the desert. Entertainment sectors that did not exist a decade ago, cinemas, concerts, mixed-gender public spaces are now being developed at enormous speed. Tourism infrastructure for a country that received almost no leisure tourists 5 years ago is being constructed across multiple major projects simultaneously. The most visible and most controversial of these is NEOM, a city being built in the northwestern corner of Saudi Arabia, on a site that currently contains nothing but desert, mountains, and coastline. The project encompasses multiple developments including a linear city called The Line, a 200-kilometer-long urban corridor 100 meters wide and 500 meters tall, designed to house 9 million people with no cars, no streets, and no carbon emissions. The projected cost is $500 billion. To place that in context, it is larger than the entire GDP of most African nations, larger than the annual budget of most European governments. A single construction project consuming resources that could transform an entire continent. Whether NEOM represents genuinely visionary thinking about the future of human habitation, or the most expensive monument to ambition ever constructed in the desert, is a question that honest economists disagree about fundamentally. What is not in dispute is the urgency behind it. Saudi Arabia is not building NEOM because it has excess capital and nothing to spend it on. It is building NEOM because it needs to demonstrate to the world and to its own population that it is capable of creating an economy that does not depend on what lies beneath the ground. And then there is the social transformation, which is inseparable from the economic one. In 2018, Saudi women were allowed to drive for the first time. Cinemas opened. Music concerts became legal. Mixed-gender public spaces appeared in a country where they had been prohibited for decades. Most Western observers interpreted this as political liberalization, as a human rights improvement driven by international pressure. That interpretation misses the economic logic entirely. An economy attempting to diversify away from oil needs workers, skilled workers, creative workers, workers who choose to live there rather than simply being born there. A country where half the population, women, is excluded from significant portions of economic participation is running its transformation engine at 50% capacity. The social changes are not a concession to Western values. They are a productivity strategy. They are the human capital component of Vision 2030, the recognition that you cannot build a knowledge economy, a tourism economy, or an entertainment economy while maintaining social restrictions that drive talent abroad and exclude half your workforce. Mohammed bin Salman understands this with a clarity that separates him from most national leaders managing resource-dependent economies. Whether the transformation succeeds is a different question. The timeline is aggressive. The domestic political management is complex. The global energy transition may accelerate faster than even the most pessimistic Saudi planning scenarios anticipated. But what is happening in Saudi Arabia right now is not routine government spending or conventional sovereign wealth management. It is a nation betting everything it has accumulated over 80 years of oil wealth on a single decade of transformation. The Saudi story teaches a lesson that applies far beyond the Arabian Peninsula. Every resource-dependent economy on Earth, every country whose prosperity rests on something it extracts from the ground rather than something it builds with its people, faces a version of the same question Saudi Arabia is trying to answer. What do you build when the resource runs out? And do you start building it before the pressure becomes existential, or after? Saudi Arabia started building. Whether it started in time is the most consequential economic question of the next 20 years. This is Wealth Map. We map the bets that nations make with their futures, so you can understand what is really happening beneath the headlines. Subscribe, because the next map reveals the single most powerful financial instrument ever created by any government and how it shapes the economic reality of every country on Earth, whether they chose it or not.